Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation to talk on the Mr. Burahla English podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You've been using Duolingo for 1,500 days straight.
I have.
Can you speak Spanish?
Not really, no.
That's the conversation that started all of this. A woman I met last week said she has spent more than 1,000 consecutive days learning on the Duolingo app, but now she can't hold a conversation.
And yet nobody finds that strange. That's what fascinates me. We've normalized this idea that you can spend 4 years doing something and not actually be able to do it.
Right, but she's maintaining contact with the language, right? Isn't that worth something?
Contact. That's an interesting word. You're in contact with a lot of things that don't change you. I'm in contact with my gym membership card every month when they charge me. Doesn't mean I'm getting fit.
Okay, but that's not fair. She's actively practicing.
Is she? Or is she actively playing a game that happens to have Spanish words in it?
You're saying there's a difference.
I'm saying that when I tested Turkish on Duolingo recently, and I actually have some background in Turkish, maybe A2 level, I spent most of my time guessing, just pure guesswork. Is it this E or that E? I have no idea. Click. Wrong. Okay, now I know for the next 3 seconds until I forget again.
But you're learning through mistakes, aren't you? Trial and error.
You're learning that you don't know something. That's different from actually acquiring knowledge. I kept getting the same question wrong over and over. At some point, the app just said, you ran out of hearts, pay us, or stop learning.
Wait, it blocked you?
Completely, mid-lesson. You failed too many times, give us money, or lose your progress.
Seems like it defeats the whole purpose.
Does it, or is that exactly the purpose? Look, I'm not trying to be cynical here, but let's think about what we're actually talking about. Duolingo is valued at billions of dollars, billions. Their business model isn't language acquisition, it's user retention.
Those are different things?
Completely different. If I sold you a perfect language learning system and you became fluent in 6 months, you'd leave, you'd be done. I'd lose a customer. But if I sell you something that feels productive, gives you little wins, keeps you coming back every day, never quite gets you to fluency.
You've got a customer for life.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I don't even think this is malicious. I think they genuinely believe they're helping people, but the incentives are all wrong.
So let's talk about what actually works. You learn languages, a lot of them.
More than I probably should have, yeah.
How much time does it actually take? Because Duolingo says 15 minutes a day makes you a serious learner.
15 minutes a day for how long?
They don't usually specify that part.
Right, because if they did the math honestly, they'd have to tell you that you need somewhere between 600 and 1,200 hours to reach functional proficiency in a language. Let's say you're running English as a second language, right?
Which is most of our listeners.
Exactly. So you do 15 minutes a day, every single day, no breaks. That's about 91 hours a year. You're looking at 7 to 13 years to reach proficiency.
But people don't want to hear that.
Of course not. We want the microwave version. We want learn English in 3 months or become fluent with this one weird trick. But language learning is more like growing a garden than microwaving dinner.
Okay, but that's some practice is better than no practice, right?
Is it? If you practice the wrong way, you might be building habits that actually make it harder to learn correctly later.
Give me an example.
Pronunciation. If you're learning English and you're just reading sentences on Duolingo, matching words, doing multiple choice, where are you learning how English actually sounds? Where are you training your mouth to make the sounds?
The app has audio.
Text-to-speech audio, which is fine for some things, but it's not a human conversation. It's not someone speaking quickly, using contractions, mumbling slightly, having an accent. Real English is messy.
So what happens when someone learns from this perfect, clear, robotic audio?
They get to an English-speaking country and panic. Everyone speaks so fast, I can't understand anything. Well, yeah, because you trained on the sanitized version.
So you need authentic content.
You need massive amounts of authentic content. And here's where it gets interesting.
Your brain doesn't learn languages through analysis. It learns through pattern recognition. You need to hear the same words, the same structures, hundreds of times in different contexts.
But that's boring.
It can be. That's why you need content you actually care about. When I'm learning a language, I'm reading books, even children's books. I'm watching shows, listening to podcasts, things with actual narratives, actual meaning.
Duolingo has stories now?
They do, and they're fine. But there's still these tiny disconnected fragments. There's no narrative arc, no characters you care about, no real reason to remember what happens because it doesn't matter. It's just content.
Versus?
Versus reading a book where you're invested in what happens next, or watching a series where you need to understand what the characters are saying because you care about them. That emotional investment does something to memory that flashcards never will.
So why do people stick with Duolingo if it doesn't work?
Because it feels like it works. You get immediate feedback, little celebrations, streaks, badges. Your brain lights up. You feel accomplished.
But you haven't actually accomplished anything.
You've accomplished what the app measured, which is answering questions correctly. That's not the same as being able to use English in real life.
Okay, so what does science actually say about this? Like real research?
About spaced repetition systems, they work, but not the way most people think. The research shows you need to encounter a word somewhere between 12 and 17 times before it really sticks. But here's the key. Those encounters need to be in meaningful contexts.
Define meaningful.
You're reading a story, and the character is furious about something. You understand from context that furious means extremely angry. Later, someone else is furious about something else. Each time, you're building a richer understanding of the word, how it's used, what it implies, when English speakers choose it over angry or mad.
Versus seeing furious in a vocabulary drill.
Where it's just furious equals very angry, and you move on. You might remember it for a test. You won't use it naturally in conversation 6 months later.
So Duolingo could work if you're using it right.
It could supplement real learning, yes. But here's my problem with it. You don't control what you learn. The algorithm decides. When I was preparing for a trip to Turkey, I needed specific vocabulary, travel stuff, restaurant language, basic courtesy phrases. But Duolingo is giving me random sentences about cats sleeping and whether it's raining.
You can't customize your own path.
Not really. The app controls your learning journey. And look, I understand why. They've built this elaborate gamified system. But language learning isn't linear. Sometimes you need to go backwards and review. Sometimes you need to jump ahead to something relevant to your life right now.
So it's too rigid.
It's not designed for learners. It's designed for engagement metrics. How do we keep people coming back? How do we prevent churn? Those are different questions than how do we help someone actually learn English?
What about writing systems? Like Hindi has its own script. Wouldn't Duolingo be good for drilling that?
You'd think, but when I tried it, everything came at me so fast. These microscopic views of letters, unclear audio. I couldn't get the overview I needed, so I bought an actual workbook where I could trace the letters by hand, see the full system laid out, understand the logic.
Old school.
Effective school. There's something about motor memory, physically writing the letters that create stronger neural pathways than just tapping on a screen.
But that's not scalable. That's not an app.
Right, and that's the tension. Apps want to scale. They want to be one size fits all. But brains are weird and individual and messy. What works for me might not work for you.
So what's your actual workflow? Like if someone listening wants to improve their English, what should they do?
First, forget about perfection. Forget about getting everything right. Your goal is comprehension and communication, not flawless grammar.
Grammar teachers hate you?
Probably. But think about it. Children acquire their first language by understanding messages, not by studying grammar rules. A 3-year-old doesn't know what a past participle is, but they're using them correctly.
Because they've heard them thousands of times.
Exactly. So for English learners, consume massive amounts of content that's just slightly above your level. Not too easy, not too hard. What researchers call comprehensible input.
What does that look like practically?
If you're intermediate, maybe you watch Friends with English subtitles. Not your language, English. You're hearing it and reading it simultaneously. When you don't understand something, you can pause, look it up, move on. You're not translating in your head, you're making direct connections between English sounds and English meanings.
But that's time. A lot of time.
That's the secret everyone wants to avoid. There's no shortcut. You need hours and hours of exposure. If you have 90 minutes a day, you could finish a whole TV series in a couple of weeks. That's dozens of hours of authentic English, with recurring characters, storylines you care about, natural conversation.
Versus 90 minutes on Duolingo?
Where you do what? Isolated exercises? Matching games? You might feel productive, but what have you actually internalized?
Okay, but not everyone can focus on a TV series for 90 minutes.
True, so you listen to podcasts while commuting, audiobooks while exercising. You're immersing yourself in English whenever possible. The goal is volume, massive amounts of input.
And output? Speaking and writing?
Comes later, and this is controversial, but I think we rush people into producing language before they're ready. You need a foundation first. You need thousands of hours of listening before you can speak naturally.
But don't you need to practice speaking?
Eventually, yes. But if you start speaking too early, you just cement your mistakes. You're practicing errors. Then later, you have to unlearn all those bad habits.
So there's a silence period.
There should be it. Think about babies again. They listen for about a year before they start talking. We don't panic and say, "Why isn't the baby speaking yet?" We understand they're absorbing, processing, building that foundation.
But adults want results faster.
Of course, we're impatient. We want to prove we're making progress. So we start speaking early and it feels productive, but we're building on sand.
How long should someone wait?
It depends on the person and the language, but for English learners, I'd say consume content, reading and listening, for at least a few months before you stress about speaking. Let the language percolate, let patterns form unconsciously.
And when you do start speaking,
Don't aim for perfect, aim for communicative. Can you express your idea? Does the other person understand? That's success. You can refine accuracy later.
so grammar study is useless?
Not useless, just over-prioritized. Grammar is like learning music theory. It's helpful for understanding why things work, but it doesn't make you a musician. You become a musician by playing music. You become an English speaker by using English.
But you need some grammar, right?
Some, sure, but it should serve your communication, not restrict it. The problem with how grammar is usually taught is it becomes this gatekeeper. You can't say that because it's not grammatically perfect. But language is about meaning, not rules.
Native speakers break grammar rules constantly.
Exactly. We say, "Who did you give it to?" even though prescriptively it should be, "To whom did you give it?" Nobody talks like that. Real English is flexible, creative, constantly evolving.
So learners should focus on natural, authentic language.
Yes, and this is where apps like Duolingo really fail. The sentences are often grammatically correct, but completely unnatural. Nobody would actually say them.
Give me an example.
The cat is drinking milk. Fine grammatically, but when would you actually need to say that? How does that help you order coffee or ask for directions or have a real conversation?
So it's not practical vocabulary.
It's random, and that's the problem. Without control over what you're learning, you're at the mercy of whatever the algorithm serves up. But real language learning needs to be goal-oriented. What do you need English for? Work? Travel? Academic reading?
Different paths for different goals.
Completely. Someone who needs English for business emails doesn't need the same vocabulary as someone who wants to watch movies.
But Duolingo treats everyone the same.
So what about books? You mentioned buying actual physical books. Books are underrated. Even in the digital age, having multiple resources helps because everyone explains things slightly differently. Something that doesn't click in one book suddenly makes sense in another.
But books aren't interactive.
They don't need to be. The interaction is between you and the content. You're thinking, processing, making connections. That's deeper than clicking buttons for points.
You sound like you really don't like gamification.
I don't trust it. It's manipulative by design. The whole point is to trigger your dopamine system to keep you engaged, regardless of whether you're actually learning.
But motivation matters. If gamification keeps people practicing,
False practice is worse than no practice sometimes. If you're building confidence in a system that doesn't actually work, you're setting yourself up for crushing disappointment when you try to use the language in real life.
The woman with 1,500 days who can't speak Spanish?
Exactly. Imagine that feeling. 4 years of daily effort, and then you meet a Spanish speaker and realize you can't communicate. That's devastating.
So what should she have done instead?
Spend that 15 minutes a day with actual Spanish content. Netflix series, YouTube channels, Spanish podcasts, even just listening while doing dishes. Would she be fluent after 4 years? Maybe not, but she'd understand conversations. She'd have that base of comprehension that makes speaking possible.
And maybe supplement with Duolingo?
Sure, if she enjoys it. 5 or 10 minutes to warm up, test yourself, feel accomplished. But that's dessert, not the meal. The meal is hours of authentic content.
This feels like it takes all the fun out of language learning.
Does it? Or if we didn't sold a lie that learning should be effortless and entertaining every second. Real language learning is messy and frustrating and exhilarating and rewarding. It's work, but it's work that transforms you.
How so?
You're literally rewiring your brain, creating new neural pathways, accessing parts of culture and communication that were closed to you before. That's profound. That's worth struggling for.
But it's hard to sell, struggle for years, and maybe you'll get there.
Right. Much easier to sell 15 minutes a day. People want the shortcut. I understand that. But the shortcut doesn't exist. It's never existed. And pretending it does just wastes people's time.
So what's your message to English learners listening right now?
Be honest with yourself about your goals and your effort. If you want to genuinely improve your English, you need hours of exposure, lots and lots of listening and reading. Find content you actually enjoy, that's crucial, and consume it obsessively. Use apps like Duolingo if they help maintain contact with the language, but don't mistake that for real learning. And be patient with yourself. Language acquisition is slow, non-linear, frustrating, but it happens if you put in real time with real content.
That's less catchy than they lied to you about Duolingo.
Maybe, but it's true, and truth is more valuable than catchy, even if it doesn't go viral.
Fair enough. Thanks for this.
Anytime.